Cool. Hello, Minil. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, how long have you been a vegan for?
So I've been a vegan for 8 years now. So shortly after I qualified as a doctor. So I've been a doctor since 2016, and a year after that, I decided to go vegan.
So, what made you go vegan?
A few things. I think my main reason for going vegan is for animal rights. So I've always loved animals. I've always kind of appreciated them, and I thought what we did to them was cruel. But I carried on doing it anyway. And then a few kind of things led up to me sort of making a decision overnight. I watched a video on YouTube by Gary Rofsky. I kind of read about what happens to the animals. I went to a sanctuary as well, and I'd helped to look after some animals, and all of that sort of led me to the decision to basically go vegan overnight on July 7th, 2017. And since then, yeah, I've been vegan.
Oh, wow, you remember the date properly. So,
So I remember because that's the day I watched the video, and then after watching the video, I said, now that I know all of this information, if I go back to doing what I was doing before, and I used to eat a lot of meat because I've been lifting in the gym and all of this stuff, I used to eat a lot of meat. I thought if I go back to doing that, then I'm not really living in line with my morals and principles. So I decided to make the change there, and then, never look back.
usually people have this notion that doctors recommend you to eat meat, and you stop eating meat because you wanted to not contribute towards the suffering of the animals. But as someone who lifts and who is interested in nutrition and weightlifting and the health stuff, how did you feel about that, about going vegan?
Yeah, I think before going vegan, I also thought, that you needed to eat meat for protein as well as other things. I thought that if you go vegan, then it's going to be harder to get the protein intake. I know there were people out there that did it, but I thought, they're going to be taking supplements and all this sort of stuff. And then when I thought about it, even when I ate meat and I was lifting in the gym, I was still taking supplements. I was taking whey protein, I was taking creatine, I was taking a multivitamin, I was using fish oil, omega-3s. So I was already supplementing anyway on an omnivorous diet. And I think for an optimal diet, I think you may have to supplement. There's no optimal diet in the world. It doesn't exist, right? So when people say, carnivore is optimal, omnivore is optimal, vegan optimal, there's no such thing. The diet that is optimal is the one that you can make complete with everything you need. And if that needs supplements, then so be it, right? So I wasn't afraid of using supplements already, right? But the protein thing was interesting because I looked at what will I need to eat? And when I looked around, I was like, wow, there's actually so many plant foods that have protein, right? Like tofu, tempeh, seitan, lentils, beans, legumes, lentil-based pastas, nutritional yeast, texture vegetable protein, soy curls, soy chops, soy chunks. All these have protein anyway, right? And if you eat a combination of all these foods throughout the day and eat enough of it, and then if you have to have a protein shake, you can have a protein shake if you like. I take it for taste and convenience. You can easily get the recommended amount of protein that you need to build muscle, right? So the RDA for average person is lower, about 0.8 grams per kilograms. I always tell people to aim for a bit higher anyway, about 1 gram per kilogram body weight for your health, because I think if you aim at the RDA, you might not always get everything you need. I think it's a low amount. It's just a bare minimum to prevent deficiency, right? We don't see any protein deficiency amongst vegans. Yeah, vegans aren't protein deficient. You never see it. Only in starvation environment will you see protein deficiency. So if people are going through a famine, or there's been a war, or what's happening, terrible things happening now in Gaza and stuff, you see famine there. Those people may have protein deficiency. But in Western society, even in India, very few people are actually protein deficient. They'll get the probably bare minimum they need. But I tell people for optimal health, aim above. And for muscle building, you aim for 1.6 grams per kilogram. And that's easy to get on a vegan diet if you know what to eat. So I had to do my research. There's lots of information online. It's all free, available. And as long as you research thoroughly what to do, it's easy.
Yeah, so that's one notion people have, that you're going to be protein deficient, and if you're going to the gym, you're taking supplements anyway. So why do people say that taking supplements is bad for you, or why are they phobic of supplements?
I think people buy into something called a naturalistic fallacy, right? They think that if supplements are unnatural, they must be bad for you, but then that means everything that is natural is good for you. That's crazy, right? We know there's so many things that are natural that you find in nature.
Poison.
Poisonous mushrooms, certain animals that secrete poison through their flesh, or when you eat them is poison, or give you, venomous snakes and things. There's loads of things in nature that are bad for you. So this naturalistic fallacy, I don't really care about that. What I care about is, has it been tested? Is it safe for humans to consume? Are there long-term outcome studies on it, right? And we know with B12 supplementation that we've got good human outcome data. We're actually supplemented vegans have better B12 levels than even omnivores that aren't supplementing. We know that you supplementing vitamin D actually raises vitamin D levels, and actually you need to do that if you're living in an environment where you're not getting enough sunlight, or if you're Asian or Indian and you're living indoors all the time, even you're risk of vitamin D deficiency, and you have to supplement it because yes, you make it through your skin, but you need an adequate amount of sunlight exposure in the right season, and you get very little from your diet anyway with vitamin D. Omega 3s is another one. Like if you're eating oily fish twice a week, then fine, but many people don't eat oily fish. Many people don't want to eat fish for religious reasons or ethical reasons, or because the fish are now becoming polluted because of how bad the oceans are, all these reasons. Okay, so you won't eat fish, you might want to supplement with the algae oil supplement, and that has omega 3s in it, DHA, EPA, which is good for brain health, eye health, and heart health. I think there's nothing wrong with supplementing as long as you know that where you're getting the supplements from are reputable, they've been third-party tested, and they're actually going to benefit your health and not take away from your health.
So when you started weightlifting, how much did you weigh, and now how much do you weigh? And has it been a challenge for you to shift from animal-based sources to plant-based sources?
So I don't know if you can tell from the video, I'm not a very tall person. So when I actually started weightlifting, I was like 50 something kilos. Really, I was very skinny, skinny Gujarati kid, right? I was very skinny. So when I started lifting, I was in the 50s, but I was also quite chubby as well. I had like fat around my belly and all this stuff. Slowly over time I've gained weight. I'm like 63 kilos now, which is still light, but I'm 10 kilos heavier than when I started. And actually going vegan, I haven't lost any weight. I've gone through different cycles of being completely shredded, like 5% body fat, bulked up again as well. So it definitely doesn't stop you doing what you need to do. And you can check out my photos online if you really think that going vegan is going to stop you getting absolutely shredded or in good shape. Some of the strongest people I know are vegan. Like there's a power lifter called Sophia Ellis. She's lifting 240 kilos on the deadlift, or 230 kilos on deadlift. She's stronger than most guys I know, right? And she's natural. She doesn't use hormones or anything like that. She's in a naturally drug tested federation for powerlifting, and she's vegan. So there's loads of vegan athletes. I'm in a documentary as well called I Could Never Go Vegan. It's streaming on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, so you can check it out online. There's lots of vegan athletes in that as well, and it just shows you with this many athletes are eating plant-based, eating vegan diets, if they're able to perform at the highest level, nothing's going to stop you.
So right, you have mentioned many sources of plant protein, but what about the quality of protein? Because so many people say that it doesn't have enough amino acids that you need, and there's so many conceptions and misconceptions and people with pseudo knowledge about this.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, so let's clear that up. Firstly, yes, all plants have protein, but when we're talking about complete, incomplete, and all of this stuff, what they're talking about is the spread of amino acids, right? So I'd like to say that no plant protein has absolutely zero of any essential amino acids. So we'll rewind a bit and talk about amino acids. So amino acids are the building blocks of protein. You need lots of different amino acids make up a protein, right, structure. And essential amino acids you have to get from your diet. Your body cannot make them, so you have to consume them in the food you eat, right? And typically people say that animal protein is superior because it has a higher amount or a better spread of all these essential amino acids. But actually, if you look at plant proteins, all the essential amino acids are there, but in varying amounts, right? So if you look at, for example, beans, they'll be lower in methionine, but higher in the amino acid lysine. Whereas if you look at grains, they are higher in methionine, lower in lysine. If you eat beans and grains either together or throughout the day in a meal, you're eating different sources of plant proteins, you'll get all the essential amino acids you need. And actually, Christopher Gardner, a famous professor in Stanford, America, he looked at actually the completeness of plant proteins and animal proteins, and he did like a really nice graph. Maybe you can show it in the graphics, this really nice chart showing actually the spread of amino acids in all these different foods. And when you look at the plant proteins, all the essential amino acids are there, but they're in just different amounts.
Right.
But no one's eating just one food. You're not going home and just eating one bean all day long. You're going to be eating beans, grains, tofu. You're eating all these different sources of protein, and you'll get all the different essential amino acids from these different sources. And provided you do that throughout the day, you're fine, right? So that completeness argument doesn't work. The only incomplete protein actually is an animal protein. Do you know which one it is?
Oh, no, not really.
Collagen. Collagen is incomplete because it lacks, I think, off the top of my head, I think it lacks tryptophan, which is essential amino acid. So that makes it incomplete, and it gives it a score of 0. There's no plant proteins out there with a score of 0. They'll be lower than some of the animal proteins, but some, like tofu and seitan, can be quite high actually in their score in terms of the amino acids and the digestibility. So really, there's no problem there. And then people worry about digestion. Can I digest these plant proteins? Can I absorb them? Well, if you eat them raw, if you eat raw beans, no, it will be very bad for you. Never do that, yeah? You have to cook them. Cooking, soaking, processing, milling, fermenting, all of these processing of foods makes the food more absorbable and makes the proteins more absorbable and digestible as well. So really there's no problem. And if there was a problem, we would see it in the studies that we do looking at vegan athletes and omnivore athletes. We look at, if we compare their protein intake and match the protein intake and put them through a workout program for 12 weeks, is there any difference after 12 weeks? So there's a famous paper in 2021 that did this in Brazil. They put, I think it was 16 participants, and they put vegans, omnivores, made them work out. 12 weeks later, measured their muscle mass, size, strength, all of this, and there was no difference between the two groups, between the vegans and the omnivores. So if there was going to be a difference because of the digestion and the absorption, we would have seen it there, but there was no difference. And we've repeated the same study in 2023. We've had a meta-analysis in 2024 and 2025 looking at, are there any differences between plant-based athletes and omnivores? There's no difference. So provided you exercise hard, you train hard, there's no reason you cannot build muscle.
You just don't love weightlifting. You actually are in a good shape.
Yeah.
So how long do you think you're going to be a vegan for? And is there any chance of you going back to consuming meat?
No, I think once you make the decision to go vegan and you realize what happens to animals, that's it. Like there's no going back. People that go back, maybe they went vegan for the wrong reasons, like for climate or their own health. So I think if you go vegan for your health, you're doing it for your own personal reason, which, is it selfish to care about your own health? I don't think it's selfish, but as a reason for going vegan, it can be quite selfish because you're thinking about yourself. But when you go vegan for the animals and you realize what happens to the animals, it's very hard to go back. And I think people that do go vegan and plant-based for their health, you're doing a good service to yourself. You're eating more fruits, vegetables, fiber, phytonutrients, poly and monounsaturated fatty acids. You're cutting out saturated fats. You're cutting out heme iron from red meat. You're cutting out foods that have no fiber, like meat has no fiber, and actually can be quite bad for your gut health. So you're doing actually something better for yourself when you do go plant-based or vegan. You're actually improving your health, provided you eat all these healthy plant-based foods. And when we look at all the studies that are long-term studies anyway on people who have been plant-based for many years, like the Adventist Health Study, Epic Oxford Study, we actually see that the vegans have better health markers, better outcomes for cardiovascular disease, better lower risk of cancers, lower risk of all-cause mortality, lower risk of type 2 diabetes. All these big killers of man, vegans and vegetarians and plant-based people actually have better health outcomes.
So there is a high population of vegetarians in India, people who don't consume animals, and some studies or some statistics have found that there is a correlation between diabetes and a lack of meat in their diet. So what do you think about that? Is it true, or is it just a skewed study, or people skewing or cherry picking that?
Firstly, I'd say I haven't seen that study. The studies that I've seen have written that. Actually, we had some really good studies recently and shocked a lot of people that the higher the consumption of red and processed meat in the diet, the higher the risk of type 2 diabetes. And the reason they think that, the hypothesis behind that may be that these diets tend to be higher in saturated fats and heme iron, which are implicated in the pathophysiology or the development of type 2 diabetes and the effect on the pancreas and the effect on the muscle and the liver as well. So actually we see that when people eat a healthy plant-based diet, they have lower risk of type 2 diabetes and obesity and metabolic syndrome and things like this. The issue with India is that even though people are vegetarian, they're consuming a lot of butter, ghee, paneer, milk, and these are still animal products, right? Especially like high-fat dairy and things like that. These aren't, in my opinion, health-promoting foods, and the studies also don't. Studies will also back up that actually consuming a high amount of butter, high amount of ghee, these are things that can raise your cholesterol, raise your risk of cardiovascular disease, raise your risk of fatty liver disease. And fatty liver disease and obesity predispose people to type 2 diabetes. And Indians have a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes at a lower rate than Westerners and Caucasians because of the propensity to develop visceral fat. So visceral fat is the fat that you store around the organs. This is why when you see a lot of Indians, they're quite slim, skinny build, but they have a bit of a belly. But that is coming from the consumption of a lot of high saturated fats and refined carbohydrates and excess calories as well, in a population which are not adapted to eating a lot of calories. India throughout history has gone through periods of famine, starvation, and actually has eaten little calories. The problem now with India is we are trying to play like Westerners. We're eating junk food, we're eating hyper palatable foods, oily foods, fried food, refined sugars, all of this stuff. This is the stuff that is driving the obesity and type 2 diabetes epidemic in India. It's not plant-based diets. It's not. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lentils are not causing diabetes. I'm confident of that. And I cannot necessarily blame it on meat alone either. I don't think it's that. I think it's diabetes is very complicated. But one of the biggest drivers we know is calorie excess. If you eat an excess of calories, this drives the development of type 2 diabetes. And if you're genetically predisposed, which Asians, Indians are, then you're going to find that the levels rise quicker.
I might not shake your hand if you give me the wrong answer. So pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh yes.
Oh God.
Yes, pineapple on pizza. Yes, of course. Yes.
Oh wow, I can't believe that.
You
But
know what? I went to Italy recently, and I found there that someone was selling pineapple on pizza. So if it's good for the Italians, it's good for you.
oh my God, I have nothing to say on that. But yeah, you're a cool person. You're an amazing person. I'll shake your hands. So can you flex in front of the camera and show how strong vegans are? That's amazing. Thank you so much, man.